In this segment, I will baste the muslin skirt together so that I can check the fit on the model before cutting the fashion fabric. Starting with a relatively long stitch, I'm basting along the seam line, and this seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch, so I'm basting at 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. And this is the back piece of the skirt. And then I will baste between that and the edge of the fabric to have two lines to gather slightly. It's just a little bit of easing, but this helps ease it into the waistband without the seam rolling over. Now what I'm doing on the two front pieces, I'm basting down the center front red line. That secures the facing and interfacing on the inside of the skirt. It keeps it from falling out to the front while I work with the skirt. And then I'll baste across the waistline just like I did the back, basting at the 3/8 inch seam allowance and then between that and the edge of the fabric. And the second front piece is done the same, basting down the center front line. This line, when it's drawn and basted, also helps me to align the skirt and pin it on the model so that I know that it's pinned exactly the way it will be when the buttons and buttonholes are on the fashion fabric. Now putting right sides together, the back and the two fronts together down the side seams. And now to press the seams. First embedding the stitches into the fabric by pressing the seams flat. And then pressing to one side. You can press the seams open or to one side. It doesn't really matter. On this seam, I see that I'm actually pressing the seam towards the front. Normally I would press it towards the back, so I think I just wasn't catching what I was doing, but it doesn't really matter for this particular fitting. The red lines, being center front, will be on top of each other. And now to sew the waistband on. For this fitting, I don't see any necessity in putting interfacing in the waistband, but I want to make sure that the waistband doesn't stretch while I'm fitting her, because sometimes the warmth of the body and manipulating the fabric will make it stretch slightly. So I'm taking a piece of hem tape and I'm going to sew it along the seam line of the waistband. That will secure the waistband and keep it from stretching. Pinning the waistband to the skirt, matching the center front line so that the seam allowance of the waistband is extending past the skirt, matching the side seams, matching the other side seams, matching center back, see there's a little bit of ease in the skirt, not much, but just a little bit. And matching the center front on the other side of the skirt allowing the seam allowance at the edge of the waistband to extend. And now I can pull those two threads and distribute the ease as I see necessary. There's very little, but I always like a little bit of ease in a waistband. It takes a while to learn how to handle gathering and easing, but what you do basically, you hold the thread strings in one hand and the fabric that you're gathering you hold in the other hand, and you hold it just tightly enough to keep the fabric from slipping out of your fingers as you pull the thread. Like everything else, it just takes practice. If I clip the threads as I go, then when the garment is completed, it already looks pretty nice. If I don't clip the threads as I go, sometimes it can be a nightmare because the threads will get caught in other seams and such. Now I'm going to baste the waistband down to the skirt on the 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam allowance of the waist of the skirt and the waistband that are sewn together up into the waistband. I can see easily through the muslin, so that's not a problem. And by doing it on the outside, I can make sure that the seam is really flat. Now, the seam that was pressed in the incorrect direction, I'm just flipping it over and pressing it towards the back. Since this is not the fashion fabric, the final skirt, I'm simply folding under and will press down the seam allowances at the edge of the waistband. Now what I'm going to do is called stitch in the ditch. I'm going to stitch the waistband along the seam line. And since the underneath side of the waistband extends down past the seam, I haven't folded it up like I will in a finished waistband, I can stitch where I'm putting these pins and it will secure the waistband for the fitting. This is called stitch in the ditch. You can see a bit of gathering below the waistband. That's the ease. And here's our skirt, lining up the center fronts. And now to prepare the pockets. I've pressed some of the seams under, but I did not press under the curved seam where the hand goes. So as a guideline, I'm going to baste along that seam line and then press it under. I'm clipping all the way to the seam. This way, when I turn that curved seam allowance under, it will turn under smoothly. If you don't clip this, it will not lay flat. You can see how those little clips spread. That's necessary for that seam to lay perfectly flat. Now basting the seam allowance and the curved seam down. I'm measuring 3 3/4 of an inch from the center front to the edge of the pocket. This is a guesstimate. When I see this skirt on the model, I'll be able to tell if the pockets are a good shape and size for her, and also if they're in a good placement. Measuring from under the waistband to the top of the pocket to make sure they're symmetrical. And on the other side, the second side of the skirt, again measuring from the center waist or the center grain line to the edge of the pocket. And now the skirt's ready to put on the model and see how the fit and shapes are.